Welcome everyone to Manny's Super Civic Cyber Conversations. We are bringing civic programming to the public using Zoom and the internet, and it's a way for us to continue our mission of civically engaging the Bay Area and beyond in this time of need. Today, I'm joined by the PR and communications expert, David Perry, to talk a little bit about crisis communications and how to communicate effectively externally in a time where so much is happening. And David, so much to talk about. How are you? How are you feeling? Where are you in the world right now?
Well, right now in the world, I'm in Palm Springs. For this entire month of March, we were supposed to be in San Francisco. There were a number of events for the Chamber of Commerce, the Chinese Historical Society, a number of clients that for all the obvious reasons have been postponed. I don't say canceled because all of them are looking forward to taking place. But right now we're here in Southern California.
I feel like your job is so important right now because there is so many people are going through, especially small business owners, unprecedented challenges, and we have to communicate that to our staff and also to the people who come to us and to our social media accounts. And so I'm really glad we're having this conversation. First, can we just talk big picture, because I know you're on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, and I know that you are talking very closely to the Hotel Council. And so can you tell me about kind of those large institutions, the Hotel Council, SF Travel, the Chamber of Commerce? What is their strategy right now in terms of how they're communicating?
Right, well, that's a good question. And first of all, thank you for doing this, Manny. I mean, this really is the definition of good crisis communication, is reaching out. The Hotel Council, San Francisco Travel, the Chamber on whose board and executive committee I sit, we've been having numerous phone calls, conversations, Skype meetings. I don't think we've ever communicated more. And all three of those institutions and the city in general have banded together just first and foremost to let people know that they're there, that this is a difficult period. No one can deny that. But those institutions communicating with their membership, it's more important than ever right now. So I'm sensing a sense of congeniality and cooperation that certainly hasn't existed in San Francisco since the '89 earthquake. And this, of course, is far in greater magnitude than that was, which, having lived through that, I never thought that I would see something hit San Francisco that big, but here we are.
Right. I think I read a report recently that as much as 125,000 hotel jobs will have been lost in California alone. It does seem like lots of folks are being collaborative and are working well with each other, and there's a spirit of cooperation. At the same time, we've only been in this situation for 2 weeks, and so I guess what would your advice be to some of these larger organizations or to any of your clients if we get the news or the instruction that we're going to have to be shut down for 2-3 months?
Right. Well, it's a very good question, Manning, and everyone's asking it. Our clients are asking it. The Chamber has discussed all of this. What I would say is, and I don't mean this in a silly way, this is an entire world example of living in the present moment. We need to plan for the future, and I know planning is going on, but right now we're talking about and talking to our clients, and I think people like the Hotel Council and SF Travel and the Chamber and other hotels that are, of course, have laid off people and their rooms are empty, telling people now, take care of yourself. Our institutions are solid. We will come out on the other side of this. And that's something that also people need to remember, especially when you're in shock. And right now we're all in shock. We're in shock as people, but we're in shock as institutions. And it's hard to realize that this is a temporary situation. I was glad the other day, and I subscribed to a lot of email newsletters, to see people talking about events being scheduled now for August, September, some events in November. That's a good thing. I've even heard the cruise ship industry, which has been, of course, hit very hard. They're talking about deals they're starting to make for later this fall and winter. Is it going to be easy? Are there going to be missteps? Yes, but we will get through this. And the thing to me that is comforting is to know that we are all going through it together. And I have seen incredible cooperation across the political spectrum and across the business spectrum.
Okay, so for the small business owners who are listening now or in the future, what are your top tips for how to communicate to the employees that you still retain and the
Right.
employees that you've had to furlough or let go temporarily during this time? How would you? What are your tips for folks to be the best communicator to those types of folks?
The personal touch. I mean, I always say that the only reason I have a career is because my grandmother made me take typing when I was 15 years old. So I type wicked fast and it's come in useful. But even if you're just a hunt and pecker on the keyboard or pick up your phone, call your employees,
Yeah.
call your clients, check in with them. And I don't mean just an e-blast.
Right.
Take the time. This is the time to communicate clearly,
Right.
communicate honestly, and
Right.
listen because we're all emotional. And this is a time for our emotions to fuel our intellect and for our intellect also to fuel our emotions. We will get through this, but we need to acknowledge of our employees and our clients and everyone else that we're in this together in a way that, frankly, without exaggerating, has not happened on this planet since World War II.
You said that in the pre-call. So tell me about that. So I thought that was very interesting. That this
Well,
moment since World War II. Explain that to me.
Well, I mean, we've all read about World War II. There was no internet then. When Churchill would speak to Great Britain, it was an entire country gathered around the radio. When President Roosevelt would speak to the United States, they were gathered around the radio, and all the Axis countries were doing it the same. They were communicating.
Right.
But we have now, because of the internet and just because of the technology that we've been living with for the last 15, 20 years, we have the ability to truly be a global village.
Right.
And before this event, that was a cliche.
Right.
Now it's truly real. So,
Right.
What I urge people to do is, yes, watch the news, but not too much. I have been watching everything. And by everything, I mean Fox, I mean the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, left, right, and center. Because I think it's very important for people in our business, and I've been speaking with all my colleagues over the last 2 weeks, to talk about how to communicate clearly. We all are emotional, so don't deny the emotion, but also while acknowledging that emotion, make sure we speak clearly and accurately and from a place of calm.
I wanted to find this picture. I was able to find it. Amazing. And I want to put it in the chat box for everyone.
Sure.
One of my friends was recently appointed to help with the coordinated response for the global economy from the White House. He's a career State Department person. I can't put it in, unfortunately. Damn, too bad. And he shared an image today of the G20 leaders all having a G20 meeting via, live chat, basically.
Right.
And I looked at the picture and all these heads of state, Narendra Modi and Justin Trudeau and Angela Merkel, all sitting in their respective desks. And it's so funny. It really did humanize, actually, all of these world leaders. At the end of the day, we're all just people in homes or offices, if we're lucky enough to have homes, just to communicate to each other.
Yeah, that is, it's an ill wind that doesn't blow someone some good, as my grandmother used to tell me, and she was and still is my hero, even though she's been dead for quite many years. And she said that, bad times bring out the best in people. My grandmother lived through the influenza epidemic in the early 20th century. She lived through the Great Depression, and she was the most hopeful person I knew, but she wasn't Pollyanna, but she had great faith in people. And I think now is a time for us to have, first of all, faith in each other, faith in our institutions. We need to criticize them when they do something wrong. We need to hold our leaders accountable. But I have been actually heartened to see some of our political leaders show real emotion. This is not a time to pretend that we're not emotional human beings, but it is time to give us all a little bit of a break. We will get through this. My message is, and not being Pollyanna, is this is a temporary situation. I thought Governor Newsom was absolutely right when he said that this is something we will get through together, and technology will help us, but really what will help us all get through it is clear communications and being human to each other.
So folks who are tuning in, you can start typing your questions in the Q&A box. I'll get to them in a moment, but if you have questions for David, whether you're about how to communicate effectively to your employees, if you have social media accounts and you want to know what kind of messages you're trying to send, how to communicate in a crisis, as a business owner or as an individual, you can start typing them in now. David, social media.
Yes.
Individual folks' social media account and small business social media accounts. What sort of messages should people be sending? What kind of content do you think people should be pushing out there right now?
Well, first of all, I think that businesses should be sending out messages saying we're here for you. Whether or not they have had to lay off employees temporarily, whether or not they're going through a difficult time themselves, reaching out and saying we're here is very encouraging and giving it that human touch. It's easy to be emotional. I have friends that I communicate with and family here in the United States, Southern California, Northern California, Spain, Italy. And a good friend of ours the other day in Italy was very emotional. And then she apologized for being so emotional. What's to apologize about? This is an emotional time. As business people, what we need to do on social media is keep our messaging simple,
Okay.
Be truthful, but also don't panic.
Okay.
Panic really never does anything. And as business owners, we need to, as humans, fight against that. But we need to advise people that there will be an end to this. Right now, we're in the middle of it. But we need to be truthful. We need to make sure that when we magnify news sources, they're legitimate, and be truthful with people, but also give them a sense of hope, which is true. I mean, today, Italy, even though they're having horrible death rate, it's beginning to wane. Spain, it looks like, is beginning to come to the worst of it, although there's a lot of pain there. So we need to acknowledge all of that, but let people know that we will get through this. And I truly believe that.
I have to tell you, David, and thank you for that. I have to tell you, I felt like a little unsure of how emotionally vulnerable I should be, because I know that people are. I don't want to precipitate panic or more, people feeling scared, right? And if I'm saying, oh my God, what if my business doesn't open? What if I can never rehire my employees? What if this goes on for 18 months? That might make things worse. So how do you square the circle of wanting to show strength and confidence, but also wanting to be realistic?
Well,
I'm scared, I'm nervous, but I don't weakness, I guess.
No. The reality is we're all going through this together in different ways. Whether you're a small business owner like you are, like I am, or the head of a large corporation, we're all humans. So we need to be truthful with people. We need to acknowledge people to people that this is emotional, but we also need to show up every day and take it one day at a time. Obviously, this is emotional. It's the most emotional experience that any of us have gone through, either as a business person or otherwise. But we need to reach out and have that human touch, and we need to trust our institutions. When they do something wrong, we need to call them on it. But I don't think now that this is the time for horrible partisan attacks. And without getting into politics, I think and anyone who knows me knows what my politics are. And in the proper forum, I'm very outspoken about them.
Right.
But this is not a time for that.
Right.
This is a time for us as institutions, as politicians, as government, as business leaders to connect with our clients on a human level and let them know that we will get through this. And we will.
I want to take a second, and we've talked about getting into this and being in it now. But I want to just kind of my last question or two to talk about when this is over.
Yeah.
And it will be over, like you said. What advice would you give to people how should they communicate the message that we're back? And what are some ways that people can utilize maybe the media, maybe local press, their social media accounts, their email lists to bring people back into their businesses? Or if they don't own businesses, what should the messages be, and how would you advise people when this is over?
Yeah, well, again, I'm going to quote my grandmother again, who was my great mentor. She said, there are two magic words in the world, please and thank you. So right now is the time to ask people if they need help, please, can you help me? Or please, what resources do you have? If you're a small business, now is the time to call your banker.
Right.
Connect with them on a human level.
Right.
Talk to the Small Business Administration. But also realize that a lot of the tools that have been put in place because of the legislation that passed just this past weekend, they're still working through it. So now is the time to be calm and hang on, but ask people for advice. And then when we get out of this, it's the perfect time to use the other two golden words my grandmother always taught me, which are perfect in business. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being there for us. You really cannot reach out to your clients enough during this period. You've been doing it through Manny's.
Right.
Our other clients have been doing it. Now is the time for the personal touch.
Okay. We'll get to folks' questions. If you have a question, please type it in the Q&A box. I see some questions in the chat box, which I'll obviously definitely ask, but the Q&A box is the best place for the questions. The first is from David Kilman, and it's any great examples of strong and effective crisis communications that you can bring up.
Well, yes. The other day, for instance, I saw a wonderful one, and I've been collecting them. I've asked a lot of my colleagues, and I want to give them all a kind of a shout out. People like Janice McKenzie, and Stuart McFall, and Alex Clemens. We're all in the same business. We're communicators, and they've all sent wonderful examples to me of what their clients are going through. But one I saw the other day was from the CEO of United, and it was just very heartfelt. And it said, "We're going through a rough time, but we're going to be there for you at the end of this rough time." And I think that's the messaging. I don't think the sort of messaging that's effective right now coming out of businesses are big, long-winded spiels, but it's a heartfelt message of saying we're in this together, we will get through it, acknowledging that it's hard because it is, but letting people know that there is, we are going to come out of this, and we will. And there will be a lot of pain, but I think we need to be honest with our clients. We need to be honest with the people who are working with us, and stay in touch.
Okay. Karen is a business owner who owns a Spain travel company and has an active and growing online travel community. And she wants to know how she can communicate with everyone, not only about the virus as it ravages Spain, but to also hope without sounding too Pollyanna. The situation here, she says, is really grave, but she's hopeful that one day her dear Spain will be ready to welcome the world back. So a great question. How do you instill hope without coming off too Pollyanna?
Well, in this exact way that she just said, you say we're going through a really rough time now, but we will come out on the end of this. And also magnifying good news. I mean, I've had some people who've criticized me and others who have thanked me, including someone who will go nameless, that told me they had post-traumatic stress disorder and said, "I'm always glad to read your Facebook feed because you're acknowledging what you're going through personally, but you find legitimate things to focus on to let us know we will get out of this." So what I would tell Karen is let people know that people will be coming to Spain again. People want to. I think what you're going to see is an incredible pent-up desire to not only travel again, but just get back to normal. And the fact that we are all going through this together means that we've all gotten one big lesson in hygiene. I think there'll be a lot less handshaking.
I think there's going to be some other pent-up desire that is going to be, there's a lot of pent-up desire right now.
Yeah, I understand. And I think that's all fine. And, not being silly about it. And, to tell Karen not to be Pollyanna, but to meet your clients where they are. Let them know that this is difficult for all of us, and just try to stay calm. That wonderful meme that's gone around the world in 50 gazillion iterations, keep calm and carry on. And the Centers for Disease Control picked it up with keep calm and wash your hands.
Yes.
That's all good messaging. Yeah. We need to focus on real messaging and acknowledge that some things will change. Yeah. We'll get back to big events with a lot of people in the public, but there's going to be changes. And there will be times when we get afraid again. Yeah. We need to acknowledge that, but also acknowledge that we are getting through this now, and we will. I sign most all of my emails now personally to everyone over the last 2 weeks. We will get through this, and we are getting through this.
Yes. Joseph Copley asks, related to my last question, or a couple questions ago, when we are in the business of creating public social gatherings, how should we project confidence that we'll be gathering again when truthfully we don't know when large-scale gatherings will be allowed again?
Well, that's a very good question. But what I tell people to focus on when they watch the news, and of course you see the numbers of cases and whatnot. If you focus on the number of people that is infected, I'm not a doctor, so don't take anything I say as medical advice. But I think we all know that there's probably many more people who've been exposed than the numbers are. Any death that causes sadness and grief is difficult to bear. We are humans,
Right.
and we need to focus on the fact that we will start having large gatherings again, and we will get good advice from the medical community about how to do that.
Right.
I think that this whole world shutting down at the moment, the front of The Economist this week has a picture of the planet Earth with a closed sign on it. And in various degrees, every country on earth is going through this for 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
I really have to give a shout out to our mayor and our governor. Mayor Breed and Governor Newsom really took a lot of heat for coming out early. And some people thought they were panicked, but it was really the example of good civic leadership, telling people that, okay, we're going to get through this, but we need to have a little bit of a pause.
Right.
And for that reason, at the moment, knock wood, San Francisco and the Bay Area's cases have not exploded as we had feared. So yes, we will get back to having big public gatherings, but we're all going to be a little tenuous.
All right.
And I think that's going to take a few months.
If folks have more questions for David, now's the time to write them in the Q&A box. I had a question that just came up, David. It feels, I don't recall spending a lot of time watching press conferences before this, but I think I've probably watched 20 press conferences in the last week. You have Governor Cuomo doing some great press conferences. I've been watching his. Our governor, Mayor de Blasio, has been doing a lot of them. Of course, the president. Wondering, are you seeing, how are you, do you agree that you're seeing a lot more press conferences happen? And also, how do you feel about civic and political leaders utilizing the press conference now in different ways?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I have seen, and without getting into specifics, I've seen what I thought were some incredible press conferences, and I've seen some that I thought were really terrible. I've seen some politicians lose it emotionally, which is understandable. But now is the time for those of us who speak to the public to really, as someone once said, put your big boy pants on and stand up. Our job is to communicate clearly. Those of us who are in public relations, marketing, communications, we need to be very careful about what we say. And I think that this is a time when we will see our politicians who are just politicians and our politicians who are true leaders. I think it's been all over the map. I would say this, I think the two people that have come out of this on the national stage that are the most impressive are Dr. Anthony Fauci and Dr. Birx. Some people have criticized them for speaking alongside the president. Whoever is president during something like this is going to call on the best minds in the country. And those two people are two of the best minds in the country. I listen to them more than I listen to the politicians.
Right. Okay, final question is from an anonymous person, which is about how you advise people to reach the more vulnerable populations in your neighborhood, like immunocompromised or elderly, people who aren't familiar with technologies. As a communications expert, what would you recommend are the ways to communicate to these populations? Is it intrusive to try to just call them, or should we send them a letter to check in on them? How should that communication happen?
I don't know of anyone who regrets having someone call them, even if they see the number on the phone and they are not in a place where they can answer it. They know you call. I have, my husband and I have several elderly friends down here in Palm Springs where we are at the moment. We've reached out to all of them. We don't want to make them uncomfortable maybe by going and being too close to them, but we reach out. So I think the first thing to do is don't be afraid to phone call. Don't be afraid to send an email. And then also there are incredible nonprofits, especially in California, that serve vulnerable populations. Now is the time, if you can afford to make a donation or donate some of your time, reach out to those organizations and let them know you're here.
Stephen works for a nonprofit, and he asks how we can reach individuals who are unhoused with our message.
Well, again, work with some of the nonprofits that work with the homeless community. I mean, San Francisco has been doing incredible work in this regard, and I've seen it here in Southern California as well, where we are at the moment. You need to use those institutions, which up until 3 weeks ago maybe we made a donation to, or maybe we didn't, or maybe we took them for granted.
Right.
Now is the time to use those institutions,
Right.
is to reach out to the nonprofits that are there on the street.
Right.
I promise you right now, they're working harder than they've ever had to work, and they're going to need our support. And when this immediate health crisis is over, those nonprofits are going to need our support more than ever.
Right, and I think, Stephen, I know Project Homelessness Connect is leading the charge as actually being out there in the community, and the Coalition on Homelessness as well.
Two amazing organizations.
And then I think I will call this question, David, do you think cruise ships can play a role in this crisis worldwide?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that. Some people know this about me. A lot of people don't, but I actually worked in the cruise ship industry 20 years ago. I've been around the world twice, 60 countries aboard ship. And the industry gets a lot of criticism, and sometimes validly, for certain things. But in this instance, I know the companies are stepping up to provide their ships as hospital spaces and whatnot. And I think they're doing a good job at communicating. It's going to be a rough time for them. But just the other day, I saw for the first time cruises that are now being booked for the fall and spring of next year. So they'll come through this too.
I've never been on a cruise, ever. But
it's a wonderful way to meet people, and I'm a big proponent of the industry, having worked in it. And they're going to have a rough time, like everybody is. But our transportation companies, cruises, the airline industry, they are there, and they are funded in a way that can help us all get through this. And we should support them, and we shouldn't be afraid to start booking a vacation. We really shouldn't. Not right now, of course, but for the fall, I would.
Any advice on how to reach out to local press someone wants to know? Let's say you have a good idea and you want to get the word out, or in general, just reaching out to the local press. Is now not a good time to try to pitch a story or an idea to local press, or are they looking for people to talk to right now?
That's a great question. And, I was really impressed with the interview you did the other day with Audrey Cooper, executive editor to the Chronicle, and we have corresponded. My suggestion is reach out one-on-one, pitch something that is direct, that is related to this, because that's what we're all going through now. And I do know, and Audrey said this the other day on your interview, they're looking for good news.
Right.
Nothing fake, but they want to give people a sense of the reality of what we're going through, but that we will come out on the other side. So my advice is not big blasted emails to your full press list, but more one-on-one. How are you doing? And is this of interest to you? And then don't pitch too hard.
Well, folks, I've just posted in the chat, and I think our amazing operator, Jupiter, will also post in the chat the link to become a sponsor to Manny's. They start at $36 a month. We could really use your help right now to keep us open in this way, and also to allow us to reopen when all this is done. I'm asking you to please support my small business by clicking on the link in the chat box and either making a one-time donation or, even better, becoming a sponsor. David, thank you so much for your expertise and your knowledge and information. Folks, his email is, can I give your email?
Please do. I'll give it myself. My email is news, like newspaper, @davidperry.com. I would love to hear from you. You can follow me on Facebook at DPNA, or David Perry SF is better. We will all get through this together, and I've been saying that, and I mean it. We are getting through it. Just keep calm and carry on, but acknowledge the emotion that we're all going through.
Thank you, David. Thank you to Sam, and Jupiter, and Ram from my team from helping put all this together. And please tag us at Welcome to Manny's and share what you learned today. And everyone, good luck with everything that you're doing. And thank you very much, David, once again. Talk to you all soon.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Manny.
Bye, David.